Maya Alvarez adjusted the gold bangle on her wrist and forced a smile as she stepped into the vast dining room of the Alvarez mansion. The long mahogany table gleamed under the glow of crystal chandeliers, and the aroma of roasted lamb filled the air. Laughter echoed, glasses clinked, and the servants scurried about with trays of food. It should have been a night of joy, but for Maya, it was a performance she had grown exhausted of playing. She could feel the eyes on her even before she sat down. The whispers started like a breeze, low, sharp, cutting straight into her chest. That's the one who can't give Daniel a child. 3 years and not even a miscarriage. Can you imagine? What kind of woman marries into wealth and fails at the only duty expected of her? Maya lowered her eyes, pretending to adjust her napkin. Her hands trembled slightly, but she forced them still. She had learned long ago that showing weakness was like throwing blood into the sea. Her husband's family would circle like sharks, ready to attack. Daniel Alvarez, her husband, strolled in moments later, tall and confident, in his tailored navy suit. His mother, Dona Rosa, immediately stood and kissed his cheek, as if he were a prince returning from battle. His sisters followed, showering him with affection, while Maya sat like a shadow at the far end of the table. Maya. Rosa finally turned to her with a smile so sharp it could cut glass. Why don't you serve Daniel first? Since you can't serve him an heir, at least do that much properly. The entire table burst into muffled laughter. Maya's cheeks burned. She rose quietly, picked up the serving spoon, and filled Daniel's plate with rice and lamb. He didn't even look at her, just continued his conversation with his father about a new business deal. Her chest tightened. Once he had looked at her with love, with fire, with dreams of forever. She remembered the night he proposed, under a cascade of fireworks by the Lagos Marina. He had called her his queen, his forever. She remembered crying tears of joy as he slipped the diamond ring onto her trembling hand. But now, forever felt like a cruel joke. The conversation around the table shifted to children. Rosa bragged about her friend's daughter, who had just given birth to her third child. Daniel's sister joked about how quickly she herself had conceived after marriage. Every story felt like a dagger plunged into Maya's heart. She lowered her fork, her appetite gone, and tried to breathe through the ache. Finally, Rosa leaned back, her voice carrying across the room. Maya, when exactly will you stop wasting our time? You've been here 3 years, and still no child. My son deserves better than this humiliation. You've brought shame into this house. Maya's lips parted, but no words came. What could she say? That she had seen doctors? That she had prayed every night until her knees went numb? That every negative pregnancy test felt like a funeral inside her chest? None of it mattered here. I'm trying, Mama, she whispered, her voice trembling. Trying. Rosa spat the word. If effort was all it took, even the street beggars would have filled a nursery by now. You're barren. Accept it. The word hit her like a slap. Barren. She wanted to sink into the ground, to vanish, to escape the sea of mocking eyes fixed on her. Daniel finally looked at her then, but instead of defending her, he sighed as if burdened. Mother, please. Let's not ruin dinner with this again. But even that small defense stung. This again, as if her pain was an annoyance, an old record he was tired of hearing. After dinner, Maya excused herself and slipped out into the garden. The night air was cool, the scent of jasmine drifting through the breeze. She sat on the stone bench and stared at the children playing on the street beyond the mansion gates. Their laughter carried to her ears, a melody she longed to hear within her own walls. Tears welled, blurring her vision. She pressed her palms to her face and let the sobs escape. She had held them back all evening, pretending, performing. But here in the quiet, the truth broke free. Why me, Lord? She whispered. Why give me love only to take away the one thing I want most? Why make me the mockery of this family? A soft crunch of footsteps on gravel startled her. She quickly wiped her tears, but it was too late. Daniel stood over her, his jaw tight. Are you crying again? He asked flatly. She swallowed hard. I can't help it. Your family. My family is right. He cut in, his voice cold. What have you given me, Maya? Not an heir, not even hope. Just endless tears. Do you know how exhausting it is to come home to this every day? Her chest tightened. Daniel, please. I love you. We can keep trying, the doctor said. Enough. His voice thundered in the quiet night. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched into his features. I'm tired of trying. I married you because I thought you would build a legacy with me, but all you've built is disappointment. Maya's lips trembled. So what are you saying? That I'm not enough? Daniel's silence was louder than any answer. He turned and walked back into the mansion, leaving her trembling on the bench, her heart shattering into pieces she could no longer gather. Hours later, long after the house had gone quiet, Maya lay awake in the bedroom she shared with him. She stared at the ceiling, listening to his steady breathing beside her, wondering how he could sleep so peacefully while she drowned in pain. She placed a hand on her stomach, willing life to form within, praying for a miracle that never came. The days that followed were no different. Every family gathering became another trial by fire. Rosa would toss comments about her barrenness as casually as she sprinkled salt on her food. The sisters would brag about motherhood, deliberately excluding her. Even the household staff looked at her with pity in their eyes. One afternoon, Rosa cornered her in the hallway. Do you know what people are saying about this family? They laugh at us, Maya. They say the Alvarez fortune will die with Daniel because his wife is useless. Do you want to see us ridiculed forever? Maya clenched her fists. I didn't choose this, Mama. Silence. Rosa's slap came fast, sharp, stinging her cheek. Don't call me Mama. You are no daughter to me. You are a curse. The words sliced deeper than the slap ever could. Maya staggered back, holding her burning cheek, as Rosa turned and walked away without a glance. That night, Maya sat at her vanity, staring at her reflection. Her once bright eyes looked hollow. The vibrant woman who had dreamed of love and family was fading into a ghost. She touched her cheek, where Rosa had struck her, then looked at the wedding necklace Daniel had given her. Once, it had been her pride, her symbol of belonging. Now, it felt like a chain around her neck. The tears came again, unstoppable. She pressed her forehead to the cool surface of the vanity and whispered, Maybe they're right. Maybe I am worthless. Outside, the children's laughter drifted again through the open window. It was almost cruel now, a reminder of everything she lacked. But she sat there, listening, because even in her pain, she couldn't tear herself away from the sound of innocence and joy. That was how Maya Alvarez survived her days in the Alvarez mansion. Not with hope, but with silence. Enduring, absorbing, breaking slowly under the weight of shame, as the world reminded her daily of what she could never give. The Alvarez mansion was unusually loud that evening. Guests flooded the compound. Expensive cars lined the driveway, and the servants rushed about carrying trays of wine and appetizers. Maya stood at the top of the marble staircase, her hands clenched tightly together, watching the glittering crowd below. Her husband's business associates had been invited, along with family friends and distant relatives. Daniel had called it a celebration of blessings, though he had given her no details. Something about the air felt wrong. She smoothed the folds of her cream-colored gown and whispered to herself, Smile, Maya. Hold your head high. Don't give them another reason to laugh at you. As she descended the staircase, she caught sight of her mother-in-law, Dona Rosa, radiant in emerald silk and dripping with jewelry. Rosa noticed Maya and smirked. Finally, the Baron Queen arrives, she said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. A ripple of laughter followed. Maya's stomach twisted, but she forced her steps steady, one foot in front of the other. Daniel appeared near the doorway, tall and commanding, his presence drawing everyone's eyes. Maya's lips curved instinctively into a smile, relief blooming, until she saw the woman standing beside him. She was stunning, with flawless skin, glossy black curls cascading over her shoulders, and a red gown that clung to every curve. She leaned into Daniel's arm with practiced ease, her hand resting boldly on his chest. But what made Maya's heart plummet was not the intimacy. It was the curve of the woman's belly, rounded and unmistakably pregnant. Gasps rippled through the room. Maya froze on the last step, her vision swimming. She tried to steady her breathing, but her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear over it. Ladies and gentlemen, Daniel announced, his arm tightening around the woman's waist. "Allow me to introduce Sophia. She is carrying my child, the future heir of the Alvarez family." The applause was thunderous. Guests clapped. Some whistled. Others whispered behind their palms. Rosa's face glowed with pride. Maya stood rooted in place, invisible, discarded. Her knees trembled. Her hands went cold. The air seemed to vanish from the room. A neighbor's voice cut through the din. "So it's true. He finally found a real woman. Poor Maya, 3 years wasted." Another chimed in, crueler. "At least he'll have an heir now. The Alvarez line won't die out after all." Laughter followed, each note stabbing into Maya's chest like a knife. Daniel's eyes finally found hers across the room. There was no shame, no regret, only cold finality. He walked toward her, pulling Sophia along, until he stood directly in front of her. The crowd hushed, sensing drama. "Maya," Daniel said, his voice firm and public, "it's time you leave this house. You've given me nothing but shame. You're no wife to me." Her lips parted. "Daniel, you can't mean." Before she could finish, he reached for her wedding necklace. In one swift motion, he tore it from her neck. The delicate gold chain snapped, the pendant falling to the marble floor with a metallic clang. Gasps filled the air. "You don't deserve to wear this," he spat. Maya staggered back, her hand flying to her bare throat. Her entire body shook. She wanted to scream, to fight, to collapse, but no sound left her lips. "Get out of this house," Daniel declared, his voice echoing through the hall. "Tonight." The words fell like a death sentence. Rosa stepped forward, her lips curling into a victorious sneer. "You heard my son. Pack your things and leave before you bring more disgrace." Maya's knees buckled. She sank onto the marble floor, tears blinding her vision. Around her, whispers swirled like poison. Pitiful. Worthless. She should be grateful he let her stay this long. Her gaze fell on the necklace lying at her feet. Once, it had been her symbol of love, her anchor in this family. Now it lay broken, just like her. The rain had begun outside. Servants dragged her suitcase to the gate, indifferent to her sobs. She stumbled behind them, her cream gown heavy and soaked as the storm poured down. At the gate, the guards pushed her forward. She fell to her knees in the mud, clutching the broken necklace. From the balcony above, Daniel stood with Sophia, his arm around her as though Maya had never existed. Sophia leaned her head on his shoulder, smiling smugly, her hand caressing her swollen belly. Neighbors gathered in the street, holding umbrellas, pointing and whispering. Some laughed openly. Children, innocent but cruel in their mimicry, shouted, "Baron! Baron!" Maya pressed the necklace to her chest, her tears mixing with the rain. Every breath hurt. Every heartbeat echoed with humiliation. She whispered into the storm, her voice breaking. "Why, Daniel? Why after everything? Was my love worth nothing to you?" He didn't answer. He simply turned and disappeared back inside, leaving her kneeling in the mud like a discarded shadow. The guards closed the gates behind her with a metallic clang that rang in her ears long after. She was outside now, cut off, stripped of dignity, stripped of home, alone. She rose slowly, her legs trembling, her gown clinging to her body in the cold rain. The whispers followed her as she walked down the street, clutching the broken necklace, her heart shattered beyond recognition. By the time she reached the bus stop at the corner, she was shivering violently. A group of women nearby recognized her and began to whisper loudly enough for her to hear. "That's Daniel Alvarez's wife." "Ex-wife, you mean? He's with a new woman now." "She couldn't give him a child. What use is she?" Their laughter rose, harsh and merciless. Maya lowered her head and stepped onto the bus, ignoring the stares of the passengers. She sank into a corner seat, pressed her forehead against the cold glass, and wept silently as the city lights blurred past. The betrayal was complete. Her marriage, her dignity, her very identity, stripped away in one cruel night. And yet, somewhere deep inside, beneath the rubble of humiliation and heartbreak, a tiny spark refused to die. She didn't know it yet, but that spark would one day set fire to everything they thought they had destroyed. For now, she was broken, For now, she was lost. But life had not finished with Maya Alvarez. The city never sleeps. Lagos pulsed with life. Honking cars, roaring generators, and vendors shouting over the rain that never seemed to end. But for Maya Alvarez, the city had turned into a cruel wilderness, swallowing her whole. 3 days had passed since Daniel had thrown her out. 3 nights of wandering streets, sleeping under makeshift shelters, clutching her broken wedding necklace like a lifeline. Her once silken gown was stained and torn, her hair tangled, her eyes swollen from endless crying. She hadn't eaten properly since that night. She survived on scraps, a half-eaten bread someone had tossed away, a bottle of water given to her by a street vendor out of pity. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, but it was nothing compared to the ache in her chest. Everywhere she turned, whispers followed her. The story of Daniel's betrayal had spread like wildfire. The rich Alvarez family, discarding their barren daughter-in-law, was gossip too sweet for the city to resist. People stared, some with pity, others with cruel satisfaction. On the 4th night, Maya sat under a rusted bus shelter, hugging her knees to her chest as rain poured around her. Her lips trembled from the cold. Her body was weak, her soul weaker. She whispered into the storm. Maybe Rosa was right. Maybe I am a curse. A flash of memory seared her mind. Daniel's face, cold and unyielding, as he ripped the necklace from her throat. Her sobs came harder, uncontrollable. She pressed the broken chain to her lips, whispering, I gave you everything. Why wasn't it enough? The storm drowned her voice. That night, the darkness around her grew heavier, oppressive. The rain pounded the streets, the thunder roared, but inside her mind, an even louder storm raged. She thought of her parents, long gone, buried in simple graves far away. She thought of her younger self, full of dreams, believing marriage to Daniel would be her fairy tale. She thought of children she had prayed for but never held. And then a dangerous thought crept in. What if I ended? She whispered. What if I just let go? She imagined stepping into the rushing traffic, letting the lights of an oncoming truck erase her pain. She imagined the relief of silence, of no more whispers, no more shame. Her hand loosened on the necklace. For the first time, she almost let it fall into the gutter. But before the thought could root itself, a soft voice broke through the rain. Miss, are you all right? Maya flinched. She turned her head slowly, and there he was, a tall man, holding an umbrella, his suit damp at the edges from the storm. His eyes, dark and kind, studied her with genuine concern. She blinked. I'm fine. Her voice cracked, betraying her lie. He crouched to her level, extending the umbrella so it covered both of them. No, you're not. You're freezing. And you look like you haven't eaten in days. She hesitated, unsure whether to trust him. Men had only brought her pain. I don't need your pity, she murmured. It's not pity, he said gently. It's humanity. Let me help you. His sincerity unnerved her. She studied him closely for the first time. His face was sharp but softened by compassion, his voice calm even against the storm. I don't even know who you are, she whispered. He smiled faintly. My name is Dr. Adrian Cruz. I'm a physician, and you look like someone who's fighting battles no one else can see. Maya's lips quivered. The dam inside her broke. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed openly, rain mingling with her tears. For the first time since that night, she didn't care who saw her pain. Adrian stayed by her side, holding the umbrella steady, his other hand resting lightly on her shoulder. He didn't speak empty words. He just let her cry, let her release the storm within her. When her sobs finally subsided, she whispered, Why are you doing this? Why do you care? His eyes softened. Because I see someone who's forgotten her worth, and I can't walk away knowing you might not survive the night. Maya stared at him, stunned. No one had spoken to her like that in years. Not Daniel, not Rosa, not anyone. Her voice was barely audible. Worth. They told me I'm worthless. Then they lied, Adrian said firmly. You are not worthless, Maya. You are priceless. The words struck her like lightning. Priceless. She clutched them tightly, afraid they would vanish. He offered his hand. Come with me. I can't promise miracles, but I can promise you won't face this storm alone." Maya hesitated. Trust had cost her everything once, but the warmth in his eyes, the steadiness of his voice, pulled her toward him. Slowly, trembling, she placed her hand in his. Adrian helped her up, steadying her frail frame. Together, they walked under the umbrella, leaving the bus shelter and the storm behind. His apartment was modest but warm. He gave her dry clothes, a bowl of steaming soup, and space to breathe. Maya ate slowly at first, her body weak, but soon hunger overpowered her hesitation. Adrian watched quietly, not intruding, only making sure she was comfortable. When she finished, she sat back, ashamed of the tears threatening again. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," he said softly. "Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is accept help." She looked down at her hands, fidgeting with the broken necklace. He noticed. "That looks important," he said. Her chest tightened. "It was my wedding necklace. My husband, he tore it off me." Adrian's expression darkened. "I'm sorry. No woman deserves that." Maya swallowed hard. "He said I was worthless because I couldn't give him a child." Silence filled the room. Then Adrian leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "Infertility is not a woman's curse. It is a medical condition, and one that can often be treated. You are not broken, Maya. Don't ever let anyone make you believe that." Her eyes widened. "Treatment? You mean there's hope?" He nodded. "Yes. I specialize in fertility medicine. I've seen women who thought they'd never conceive go on to hold their babies in their arms. But hope begins with believing you deserve healing." For the first time in years, a flicker of light stirred in Maya's chest. It was faint, fragile, but real. She whispered, "What if I fail again? What if they were right all along?" Adrian's gaze held her steadily. "Then you will rise again. Because your worth is not tied to a womb. It's in who you are, Maya. And I can already see. You are stronger than you know." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but this time, they weren't only of sorrow. They carried something else, relief. For the first time since Daniel's betrayal, she felt the weight on her chest ease, if only slightly. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight, in this small apartment, she had been given something she thought she'd lost forever. Hope. And though her journey was only beginning, that hope would be the ember that one day turned into fire. Maya Alvarez stood in front of the small bathroom mirror in Adrian's apartment, staring at the stranger looking back at her. Her once flawless skin was pale from weeks of hunger and despair, her eyes hollow, her lips cracked. She wore one of Adrian's oversized shirts, and though it swallowed her petite frame, it felt like the first piece of comfort she had been given in years. She touched her face and whispered, "Who are you?" The woman she had once been, polished, radiant, the wife of a wealthy man, was gone. In her place stood someone broken, stripped of pride, yet somehow still breathing. When she stepped out, Adrian was in the kitchen preparing breakfast. He moved with quiet efficiency, humming under his breath. The smell of eggs and fresh bread filled the room. He glanced up and smiled warmly when he saw her. "You should eat," he said gently. "Your body needs strength before anything else." She hesitated. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden," Adrian replied firmly. "You're a human being who deserves care." His words disarmed her. She sat at the table, and he placed a plate before her. For the first time in days, she ate slowly, savoring each bite. Adrian watched quietly, not with judgment, but with the patience of someone who understood pain. After breakfast, he leaned forward, folding his hands. "Maya, I need to ask you something. Have you ever had a full medical checkup regarding your fertility?" Her chest tightened. "Yes, years ago. The doctor said I had hormonal issues. They gave me pills, but nothing worked. After a while, Daniel said I was wasting his money." Her voice broke. "He stopped taking me altogether." Adrian's jaw clenched. "That wasn't your fault. Medicine isn't always instant, and treatment has advanced a lot in recent years." She looked up, hope flickering cautiously in her eyes. "Are you saying I still have a chance?" He nodded. "I can't make promises, Maya, but I can try. We'll run tests, see what's happening, and go from there. What matters is, you're not alone this time." Her throat tightened. No one had ever spoken to her like this, with respect, with care, with genuine belief in her. Tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. "I don't know why you're helping me," she whispered. Adrian's expression softened. "Because sometimes, life brings people into your path for a reason. I don't know your whole story yet, Maya, but I know this. You're worth saving." Those words echoed in her mind long after. The following weeks were a blur of hospital visits, tests, and treatments. Adrian guided her through each step patiently, explaining the procedures, reassuring her when she faltered. On the first day at his clinic, Maya had been terrified. She sat in the waiting room, hands clenched, eyes darting around nervously. Memories of Rosa's mocking voice, "You're barren. Accept it," haunted her. When Adrian came to lead her in, she whispered, "What if it's bad news? What if I really can't?" He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Then we fight another way. But don't bury yourself before we've even tried. Believe with me, Maya. Just once. Believe." She swallowed hard and nodded. Days turned into weeks. Maya's body slowly regained strength with proper food and care. The shadows under her eyes faded, replaced by a glow she hadn't seen in years. She started to wear her hair in neat buns again, even dared to wear soft colors. Each small change was a victory. At night, she and Adrian often sat on his balcony, talking under the stars. "Do you ever feel like God forgot you?" she asked one evening, her voice trembling. Adrian looked up at the sky, then back at her. "Sometimes, yes, but I've learned that he doesn't forget us. We forget ourselves. And sometimes, the delay is protection. Maybe you weren't meant to raise a child in a house where you were despised. Maybe your miracle is waiting for the right time." Maya stared at him, tears shining in her eyes. "No one's ever spoken to me like that." He smiled gently. "Get used to it." One morning, after weeks of treatment, Maya sat nervously in the examination room, her heart pounding. Adrian entered with a file in his hands, his expression unreadable. She jumped to her feet. "Tell me, please." He studied her for a moment, then broke into a warm smile. "Maya, you're pregnant." Her world stopped. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed into the nearest chair, covering her mouth with her hands. Tears streamed down her face uncontrollably. She shook her head, unable to believe it. "No, no, it can't be," she whispered. Adrian knelt before her, his voice steady. "It can. It is. You're going to be a mother, Maya." She sobbed openly, the sound raw, guttural, years of pent-up pain breaking free. She clutched her stomach, whispering, "Thank you, Lord. Thank you. I'm not broken." Adrian's eyes glistened too, though he tried to hide it. "You never were broken. This is only the beginning." The weeks that followed were the happiest she had ever known. For the first time, her mornings were filled with joy instead of dread. She began sketching jewelry designs again, something she had abandoned long ago. She poured her emotions into each design, creating pieces that reflected her rebirth. Adrian often found her at the dining table late at night, sketchbook open, her rounded belly visible beneath her loose dress. "You're glowing," he said one night, watching her work. She laughed softly, a sound he had never heard from her before. "Maybe it's the miracle growing inside me." He shook his head. "No, Maya. It's you. You were always meant to shine." Her cheeks warmed at his words, though she quickly lowered her gaze. Something unspoken lingered between them, a bond forged not from romance, but from compassion, trust, and healing. As her belly grew, so did her spirit. She walked the streets with her head high now. She no longer flinched at whispers or stares. She carried life within her, proof that she was not the barren curse they had claimed. One afternoon, while shopping at the market, she overheard two women gossiping. "Isn't that Daniel's ex-wife? I heard he left her for another woman." "Yes, the barren one." Maya turned to face them, her eyes blazing with quiet pride. She placed a hand on her belly and said firmly, "Not barren. Not anymore." The women's jaws dropped, and Maya walked away, her steps steady, her heart triumphant. When the day finally came, Maya gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. The delivery was long and painful, But when she heard their cries for the first time, every wound, every scar, every humiliation vanished. She held them close, tears streaming down her cheeks. "My babies," she whispered. "You are my proof, my miracle, my crown." Adrian stood by her bedside, his eyes shining. "You did it, Maya. You're a mother." She looked at him, gratitude overflowing. "No, we did it. You believed in me when no one else did." In that moment, Maya Alvarez, once mocked, once discarded, had been reborn, not as a wife, not as a victim, but as a mother, an artist, and a woman with a destiny bigger than the shame that tried to destroy her. And though she didn't know it yet, her twins would not only be her joy, they would become the symbols of a rise so powerful that the world itself would bow to her crown. Maya Alvarez woke before dawn, not because she was restless, but because her life had taken on a rhythm that no longer allowed idleness. The cries of her twins stirred her, their soft voices filling the small apartment she shared with them. She rose quickly, her feet finding the cold tiles, and padded toward their crib. Her son stretched his tiny arms toward her, his sister curled beside him, their breaths gentle and innocent. She lifted them one after the other, pressing soft kisses to their foreheads. The warmth of their little bodies against her chest reminded her of the miracle that had rewritten her story. Only a few years ago, she had been discarded, told she was barren, called worthless. Now she was a mother. That alone gave her strength to rise every morning with determination. She fed them, hummed soft lullabies, then laid them back to rest. Afterwards, she cleared the kitchen table, pulling out her sketchbook and a small box of tools Adrian had helped her gather. The tools were simple: pliers, beads, silver wires, fragments of stones she had bought cheaply at the market. By candlelight, she bent over her work, hands steady, mind alive with ideas. Jewelry design had once been a quiet passion, something she toyed with when her soul felt restless. Now, it had become her lifeline, her way of rebuilding an identity that was once shattered. She sketched a necklace, its centerpiece shaped like interwoven branches, representing resilience. She drew earrings shaped like teardrops, symbolizing sorrow turned into beauty. Each design was born from the pain she had endured and the hope she now carried. When she finished a piece, she placed it on the table, gazing at it with both awe and disbelief. Could something born from her brokenness shine enough to capture the world's attention? Adrian often found her in this position when he came to check on her and the children. One morning, he leaned against the doorway, watching her work. "You haven't even touched your breakfast," he said softly. Maya didn't look up. "I'll eat after this. I need to finish the class before it slips from my mind." He walked over, studying the half-finished necklace in her hands. "This is remarkable. Do you realize what you've created?" She gave a faint smile. "Just wires and beads. Nothing special." "No," Adrian corrected. "It's more than that. It's your story. Pain, strength, survival. People can feel it in your designs." She lowered her eyes. "But who would buy jewelry from me? I have no name, no shop, no connections. Just a woman with a past too broken to inspire anyone." Adrian crouched, making sure she looked at him. "Maya, you've already proven that nothing is impossible. You carried life when they said you couldn't. You built hope from ashes. Believe me, the world is hungry for stories like yours. Don't hide your gift." His words settled into her heart, like seeds waiting for rain. Weeks turned into months. Between caring for her twins and taking on small cleaning jobs to earn money, Maya continued to design. She began selling small pieces online through local platforms. At first, only a handful of customers showed interest. A young bride bought one of her bracelets, saying it felt different, like it carried a soul. Another customer ordered earrings and left glowing feedback. Slowly, word of mouth spread. One day, a stylist preparing for a fashion event stumbled upon her designs online. Intrigued, she reached out. "I want to feature your necklace in a photo shoot." The message read. Maya nearly dropped her phone. She doubted it was real, but Adrian urged her to take the chance. She polished the necklace, packaged it carefully, and sent it off. When the photographs were released weeks later, Maya's necklace gleamed on the neck of a rising actress. The image went viral. Social media users began asking, "Who made this? Where can I buy one?" Maya's small shop flooded with messages. Orders poured in, more than she could handle. She worked late into the night, sometimes with her twins asleep beside her on the table, sometimes with Adrian rocking them gently while she hammered, twisted, and polished. Exhaustion weighed on her body, but joy filled her spirit. Each piece she sent out carried a fragment of her rebirth. Then came the day that changed everything. A royal gala was scheduled in the Kingdom of Aurelia, attended by monarchs, celebrities, and dignitaries. The crown princess, known for her impeccable fashion, requested accessories from local and international designers. By what Maya could only describe as divine alignment, her necklace was chosen. She almost fainted when she heard the news. "Adrian, no, they must be mistaken. Why would a princess wear something I made in a one-room apartment?" Adrian smiled knowingly. "Because your work carries something no palace can manufacture, authenticity. Maya, this is your moment. Don't run from it." On the night of the gala, the world watched as the princess stepped onto the red carpet in a flowing gown. Around her neck shimmered Maya's creation, the necklace of interwoven branches, symbolizing resilience. Cameras flashed, headlines erupted. Fashion critics called it a masterpiece of symbolism and beauty. Within hours, Maya's name trended worldwide. She watched from her apartment, her twins asleep in her arms, tears streaming down her cheeks. For years, she had been called worthless. Tonight, the world called her genius. The next morning, international orders crashed her online shop. Emails from luxury boutiques arrived. Fashion magazines requested interviews. Investors offered to fund her expansion. Maya was overwhelmed. She clutched Adrian's arm, whispering, "This can't be real. It's too much." He looked at her with quiet pride. "It's real, Maya, and it's only the beginning." With his encouragement, she formalized her brand. She named it Corona, meaning crown, to signify triumph over shame. She hired artisans, trained them personally, and infused each piece with her story. Customers said her jewelry didn't just shine, it spoke. It told them they too could rise from pain. They too could wear resilience as adornment. Months later, Corona pieces graced runways in Paris and New York. Maya herself was invited to attend shows, her elegance and grace captivating audiences. Photographers captured her walking with quiet confidence, her twins sometimes in her arms, a symbol of motherhood and power combined. Yet, success didn't blind her to humility. She returned often to the markets where she once bought beads, purchasing materials from local vendors, employing struggling women as artisans, giving them opportunities she once lacked. To the world, she was a fashion mogul. To her community, she was hope incarnate. But perhaps the most defining moment came during a televised interview. The host leaned forward asking, "Maya Alvarez, once shamed for being barren, now mother and billionaire designer, what do you say to women still suffering under that same stigma?" Maya paused, her eyes glistening as she looked into the camera. "I say this. You are not defined by what people say you cannot do. You are not barren. You are not worthless. You are not a curse. You are a crown, waiting to shine. Pain is not the end of your story. It can be the beginning of something greater." The audience erupted in applause. Across the world, women replayed her words, weeping, inspired. She had become more than a designer. She had become a voice. Behind the applause, Adrian stood backstage, watching her with quiet admiration. He had seen her at her lowest, kneeling in the rain, ready to give up. Now she stood radiant, crowned by her own triumph. Their eyes met briefly, and Maya smiled through her tears. Later that night, when the cameras were gone, she returned home to her twins, who reached out for her with sleepy giggles. She scooped them up, pressing her face against their soft cheeks. "Everything I do is for you," she whispered. "You are my crown, my reason, my miracle." The world had called her worthless. But now, through resilience, faith, and an unshakable will, Maya Alvarez had risen beyond wealth, beyond shame, beyond pain. She was priceless, and nothing could strip her of that again. Her rise had only begun, but already, she was rewriting not only her story, but the stories of countless others who saw themselves in her. And somewhere, in the city where she had once been discarded, whispers of her name reached the very family that had called her a curse. They saw her face on television, her jewelry on royalty, her brand on the lips of millions. The same lips that once mocked her now trembled in disbelief. The world had crowned the woman they had thrown away. And Maya? She was only just beginning. Maya Alvarez had grown used to the world watching her. Her name was whispered in boardrooms, flashed across fashion magazines, and celebrated on red carpets. Yet no matter how many interviews she gave or galas she attended, she remained grounded by her children and her work. For her, success was not merely the wealth she had amassed, but the dignity she had reclaimed. Still, life had one more turn in store, one she had never dared to imagine. The Royal Exhibition in Aurelia was an event like no other. Held in the glittering Crystal Hall, it drew designers, monarchs, and dignitaries from every corner of the globe. Maya's brand Corona had been selected as a featured showcase. Her artisans worked tirelessly for months, crafting collections inspired by survival and rebirth. Each piece carried her signature style, jewelry that told a story. She arrived in Aurelia with her twins at her side, their laughter echoing through the grand palace where they were lodged. On the night of the exhibition, the Crystal Hall glowed like a jewel. Chandeliers hung from domed ceilings, their light scattering across golden floors, polished to perfection. Guests arrived in silks, diamonds, and crowns. The air hummed with music, the rustle of gowns, and the clinking of crystal glasses. Maya walked into the hall in a gown of deep sapphire blue, her hair swept back into a sleek bun, a crown-like tiara of her own design resting gracefully on her head. Her twins, dressed in miniature suits, waved shyly at the flashing cameras. The world paused to look at her, the once broken woman now radiant, powerful, and regal. As she moved among guests, answering questions, she felt a presence before she saw him. Conversations hushed slightly as King Alexander of Aurelia entered the hall. Tall, broad-shouldered, and commanding in his simple yet majestic attire, he carried himself with the ease of a man born to rule, yet burdened with the weight of loss. Widowed young, Alexander had withdrawn from public attention, dedicating himself to governance and his daughter. But tonight, his eyes found Maya across the room. Their gazes locked, and for a brief moment, the room faded. He crossed the floor with deliberate steps until he stood before her. His voice, deep and resonant, carried softly above the hum of music. "Ms. Alvarez." Maya inclined her head politely. "Your Majesty." He studied her with calm intensity. "I have seen your work. They said your designs carry soul. Now I understand why. You wear your story in your eyes." Her breath caught. Compliments no longer startled her. Journalists praised her daily, but his words struck differently. They were not about wealth or beauty. They were about truth. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Everything I make is born from pain. It's the only language I know." He nodded. "And yet it shines brighter than joy. That is rare." Their conversation was interrupted by officials urging him to greet other dignitaries, but as he turned away, he glanced back once more. Maya felt a strange stirring, unfamiliar and unsettling. Over the next days, invitations arrived for her to join smaller royal gatherings. At first, she refused politely, wary of being drawn into another world of expectations and power games. But when the invitation came from Alexander himself, handwritten and sealed with the royal crest, she hesitated. The note was simple. "I wish to understand the woman behind the crown she built. Will you grant me an hour of your time?" She showed it to Adrian, who had accompanied her on the trip to care for the twins. "What do I do?" she asked nervously. Adrian smiled faintly. "Maya, you faced worse than a king's invitation. If you don't want to go, say no. But if you're afraid only because you've been hurt before, maybe it's time to see that not every man is Daniel." Her heart tightened at the name, but she knew Adrian was right. That evening, she dressed simply, leaving behind extravagant gowns, and attended the private dinner. The room was intimate, lit by candles, a single table set with elegance. Alexander rose when she entered, bowing slightly before pulling out a chair for her. The gesture startled her, so different from Daniel, who had never once done the same. They ate, and their conversation flowed easily. He asked not about her wealth, but about her journey, her children, her dreams. She spoke honestly, surprising herself at how much she revealed. She told him about the rain-soaked night she had been thrown out, about the necklace torn from her neck, about the twins who had become her crown. He listened without interruption, his gaze steady, his silence respectful. When she faltered, whispering, "I was called barren worthless." His hand tightened briefly around his wine glass before he set it down. His voice was low but fierce. "A man who sees a woman's worth only through her womb is no man at all. Maya, I see no scars on you, only strength." Her eyes burned with tears. She looked away, afraid of what he might read in them. "You don't know how hard it is to trust again." "I don't ask for trust," he said gently, "only for the chance to prove I am worthy of it." After that night, their paths crossed often, sometimes at public events, where his eyes sought hers across crowded rooms, sometimes in private, where they spoke for hours about faith, about leadership, about love's fragility. He met her children, kneeling to their level, making them laugh with silly faces. He told them stories of his own daughter, a bright-eyed girl who quickly became fond of Maya's twins. The children's laughter filled the palace halls, echoing with the sound of a family that was slowly, unknowingly, being knit together. Whispers spread through the press, the king and the jewelry queen. Critics speculated, nobles raised eyebrows, but the public adored them. For many, Maya became a symbol of hope, a woman once discarded, now standing beside a king, not as a consort, but as an equal. Yet in quiet moments, when Alexander's kindness threatened to overwhelm her defenses, Maya's fears clawed back. One night, on the palace balcony, she confessed, "I still hear their voices, the ones who said I was nothing. What if I'm not enough for you? For this world?" He turned to her, his eyes fierce under the moonlight. "Maya, you are more than enough. You are not defined by their cruelty. You are the woman who built an empire from ashes, who turned tears into jewels. Aurelia does not need a perfect queen. It needs a true one. And you, Maya Alvarez, are truer than anyone I have ever known." Her tears spilled silently, but this time, they carried no shame. For the first time, she let herself lean into another's strength, resting her head against his chest. His arms encircled her gently, not as possession but as protection. Love did not come like fire this time. It came like dawn, gentle, steady, inevitable. By the end of her stay in Aurelia, the bond between them was undeniable. Alexander did not rush her, did not demand declarations, but when he placed a crown in her hands one evening, whispering, not as a symbol of power, but as a promise of honor, Maya knew her heart had begun to heal. She returned home with her children and her empire, but she carried more than success now. She carried the possibility of love, not the kind that destroyed, but the kind that rebuilt. And though her journey had begun in shame, betrayal, and despair, it was leading her toward a throne she had never sought, but was destined to claim. The sun over Lagos burned brighter that morning, as if even the skies were preparing for what was to come. For weeks, the city had buzzed with rumors. The jewelry queen of Aurelia, the woman who had risen from disgrace to global renown, was returning. But no one could have predicted how she would come. The royal carriage gleamed in the midday light, its golden wheels rolling steadily over the cobbled roads. Guards in ceremonial armor marched alongside, their polished boots striking the ground in perfect rhythm. Crowds lined the streets, their voices rising in gasps and cheers as the procession passed. Children climbed onto rooftops, vendors abandoned their stalls, and even the most hardened critics craned their necks to see. Inside the carriage, Maya Alvarez sat tall, her sapphire gown flowing like liquid night, her head crowned with the same tiara she had designed for herself when she first launched Corona. Her twins sat beside her, their small hands clutching hers, their eyes wide with wonder. And across from her sat King Alexander, regal and composed, his presence radiating power and calm. He caught Maya's eye and gave a small nod, as if to remind her, "This is your moment. Own it." Maya exhaled slowly, steadying the storm of emotions within her. She had dreamed of this day countless times, imagining how it would feel to walk again on the soil where she had once been thrown out in disgrace. Now reality surpassed the dream. The very city that had mocked her, called her barren, laughed as she knelt in the mud, now chanted her name in awe. Queen Maya! Queen Maya! Voices rang through the streets. The carriage came to a halt before the Alvarez mansion. It looked the same, tall gates, polished marble walls, and sprawling gardens, but to Maya, it was a ghost from her past. This was the house where she had been stripped of dignity, where Daniel had torn her necklace from her neck, where Rosa had spat at her feet. Memories assaulted her, but she steadied herself, pressing her children's hands gently. "Are you ready?" Alexander asked softly. She met his gaze. "I was born ready for this." The guards opened the carriage doors, and Maya stepped out first. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause. Flashbulbs exploded as cameras captured every detail. Her crown glittering under the sun, her gown sweeping gracefully, her twins smiling shyly at her side. Alexander followed, his presence commanding, but tonight all eyes were on her. The mansion gates swung open, and there they were, Daniel, his once proud shoulders stooped, his face pale. Sophia stood beside him, her beauty dimmed by bitterness, clutching their son. Behind them, Rosa hovered, older now, but her eyes still sharp with arrogance, though it flickered with disbelief as she stared at Maya. For a moment, silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Maya took a step forward, her every movement deliberate, her children flanking her like symbols of the life she was told she could never have. Rosa's lips trembled. It cannot be." Maya's voice carried, strong and clear. "It is." Daniel staggered forward, desperation breaking through his pride. "Maya, please listen to me. I made a mistake. I was blind, foolish. I didn't know what I had until it was gone. Please forgive me." The crowd gasped. Whispers rose like a wave. Maya studied him coldly, her expression unreadable. For years she had dreamed of this. Daniel on his knees, begging for the love he once threw away. Now that it was here, she felt no joy, only pity. "You tore my necklace from me," she said, her voice steady. "You called me worthless. You stood by while your family spat on me. And now, you dare ask for forgiveness." Daniel dropped to his knees, his voice breaking. "I was wrong. Maya, I swear I was wrong. Look at me. I've lost everything. Our business has collapsed. Sophia, she isn't what I thought she was. I need you, Maya. Please come back to me." Sophia turned on him instantly, her voice shrill. "What are you saying, Daniel? You promised me." "Silence." Daniel snapped at her, his desperation consuming him. "You're nothing compared to Maya." The crowd hissed and booed, scandalized by his betrayal of his mistress. Maya shook her head slowly. "No, Daniel. You don't need me. You need someone to bear the weight of your failures. And I will never carry that burden again." Rosa finally stepped forward, her voice shaking with a mixture of fury and fear. "Maya, you cannot speak this way. You may wear crowns now, but you will always be the barren girl I cast out." Maya turned to her, her crown catching the light as she raised her chin. "Look at my children. Look at the proof you swore I would never hold. You called me barren. Today I call myself blessed." The twins stepped forward shyly, their small hands clutching hers. The crowd roared in approval. Women wept openly. Men cheered. Children chanted her name, louder than ever. Rosa's mouth opened and closed, her pride collapsing under the weight of truth. She stumbled back, covering her face. Maya took another step, her voice now commanding. "You told me I was worthless. Today, the world calls me priceless. You told me I would never wear a crown. Today, I stand before you crowned not by your acceptance, but by my own triumph. You tried to bury me, but I was the seed that grew into a forest." The crowd erupted, chanting in unison, "Queen Maya! Queen Maya!" Alexander stepped forward then, holding a smaller crown in his hands. The noise hushed instantly. He turned to the people, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "This woman, this mother, this queen, she has shown the world what resilience looks like. And today, before her children, before those who mocked her, I place this crown not just on her head, but on her story. A crown of dignity. A crown of honor. A crown that can never be stripped away. He placed the crown gently on her head. The crowd exploded, the sound like thunder, rolling through the city. Maya's children clapped and cheered, their voices high and joyful. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but they were no longer tears of pain. They were tears of triumph. Daniel collapsed fully onto the ground, his sobs echoing. "Forgive me, Maya. Please. I was a fool. I was blind." Maya looked down at him, her gaze unflinching. "You had a queen and you threw her away. Now crawl in the dust of your own choices." Her words were final. She turned her back on him, taking her children's hands. As she walked back toward the carriage, the chants grew louder, drowning out the broken sobs of the man who once called her worthless. Maya Alvarez, once a woman discarded in the rain, now returned with children and a crown. And as the carriage doors closed behind her, she knew in her soul that this was not just triumph. It was justice. The Alvarez mansion glittered that evening as though it had been reborn. Chandeliers blazed with light, musicians filled the halls with soft strings, and servants hurried about preparing for the charity gala. It was an annual event, one of the family's last threads of relevance in the city's high society. This year, however, the tension was palpable. For weeks, whispers had spread. Maya Alvarez, once thrown from these very gates, would return, not as a discarded wife, but as a queen, philanthropist, and global icon. Maya stepped out of her carriage, her sapphire gown flowing behind her like liquid night, her crown gleaming under the golden lights of the mansion she once called home. Her children held her hands, dressed in elegant suits, their eyes wide with the spectacle of it all. King Alexander walked beside her, his presence steady, his arm brushing lightly against hers, as though reminding her she was not alone. Cameras flashed wildly, reporters shouted her name, and the crowd outside the gates erupted into chants. "Queen Maya! Queen Maya!" Inside, Daniel fidgeted with his tie. His once sharp features were dulled by years of regret and loss. His businesses had collapsed, investors had abandoned him, and the mistress who had once been his prize now looked weary and bitter. Sophia sat at the edge of the ballroom, clutching a glass of wine, her eyes darting toward the entrance nervously. Rosa, her once commanding presence weakened by age and disgrace, sat stiffly, her lips pursed in disdain though her eyes betrayed unease. The grand doors opened. Silence rippled through the ballroom as Maya entered, every head turning. Her steps were slow, deliberate, her gown brushing the polished floor like a tide reclaiming its shore. Conversations halted, glasses paused mid-air, and every guest felt the shift in the air. Daniel rose abruptly, his face pale. Maya, she did not even glance at him. Her eyes were fixed ahead, her children walking proudly by her side. Alexander followed, regal yet deferential, as though the night belonged to her, not him. Rosa finally found her voice, brittle but sharp. "So you return to flaunt yourself? You may have fooled the world with crowns and jewels, Maya, but to me you will always be the girl who shamed this family." Maya stopped in the center of the room, her crown catching the light. She turned slowly, her gaze sweeping across the guests who had once whispered about her, the very walls that had echoed her humiliation. Her voice, when it came, was steady, clear, and unshakable. "You spat on me in this house. You called me barren, worthless, cursed. You tore my necklace from my neck and cast me into the rain. I walked out of these gates broken. But tonight, I return not as your victim, but as a queen crowned by resilience, as a mother blessed beyond measure, as a woman the world calls priceless." The room buzzed with murmurs. Maya's words carried weight heavier than the chandeliers above them. Daniel stumbled forward, his voice breaking. "Maya, please listen to me. I know I wronged you. I was blind, foolish, consumed by pride. Forgive me. Please, give me another chance." The crowd gasped. Sophia dropped her glass, the shatter echoing across the ballroom. Maya looked at him coldly. "You want forgiveness? You tore my life apart, Daniel. You paraded your mistress before me, declared me barren, and cast me into the streets. Tell me, if I had died that night in the rain, would you be here begging?" Daniel fell to his knees, desperation consuming him. I beg you, Maya. I lost everything. Our fortune, our respect, even her. He shot a bitter glance at Sophia, who looked away in shame. All I have left is this chance to repent. Please. Maya's lips curved into a faint smile, not of warmth, but of resolve. You had a queen, Daniel. You chose ashes. Now you kneel, not before me, but before the weight of your own choices. She turned to Rosa, whose face flushed crimson. And you called me a curse. Look at my children. Look at the life you swore I would never hold. The curse you spoke became the blessing that crowns me today. The twins stepped forward timidly, their small hands clutching hers. The crowd erupted into applause, tears glistening in many eyes. Women in the audience whispered fiercely to one another. She is every one of us who was ever mocked. She is proof that we rise. Rosa's voice cracked, brittle and desperate. You cannot erase the shame you brought us. Maya cut her off. The shame was never mine. It was yours, for not seeing my worth. Tonight, that shame stays with you. Silence fell, heavy and final. Alexander stepped forward then, holding a crown encrusted with diamonds and sapphires, crafted by Maya's own artisans. He raised it high for all to see, his voice deep and commanding. Tonight, in the very house where she was once cast aside, I honor Maya Alvarez not only as Aurelia's queen, but as a queen in her own right. May this crown be the symbol of her triumph, her dignity, her unshakable strength. He placed the crown gently on her head. The crowd exploded, cheers shaking the chandeliers. Guests rose to their feet, clapping, chanting, tears streaming down their faces. Queen Maya! Queen Maya! Maya lifted her chin, her crown gleaming, her children smiling up at her with pride. She looked down at Daniel, still kneeling, broken and trembling, his tears pooling on the polished floor. Her voice cut through the thunderous applause, calm and final. You once told me I would never bow to you again. You were right. Tonight, it is you who kneels, and I who rise. Daniel collapsed fully, his sobs drowned by the chants. Rosa slumped back in her chair, her eyes glazed, her pride shattered beyond repair. Sophia slipped quietly from the room, humiliated, forgotten, her dreams turned to dust. But Maya stood tall, her children at her side, her crown gleaming under the lights. The girl who had once knelt in the mud, mocked and discarded, had returned to the very place of her shame to claim her victory. And as the world watched, she knew this was more than revenge. It was justice. She leaned down, kissed her children softly, and whispered, "This crown is not mine alone. It is ours." The crowd erupted once more, their voices carrying beyond the mansion walls, into the streets, into the city, into history itself. From that night onward, Maya Alvarez was remembered not as the woman who had been mocked for barrenness, but as the queen who rose above it all, crowned by her pain, her children, and her triumph. Her story was no longer one of shame. It was legend. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please like, comment, and share. Also turn on the bell to get more of our videos. See you in the next story.